and we got no sound. Oh my goodness. All right, that is us. So thank you. Hopefully, is it better now, guys? Are we getting sound now? Hope so. Okay. So one of my macros went wrong on this one. Hey, if you're coming in late, let's just say that we went parasailing. It was fun. I'll talk about it some other time. We're just going to edit the first 2 minutes of the show out and pretend that we knew what we were doing. Excellent. Okay, so let's see here. And yes, I did get indeed out to vacation down in Florida, and it was a really good time. All right, so let's see here. The thing I meant to tell everyone is, if you have questions, please post them to the show chat. I will get to as many of these as I can. I do have some stuff I want to talk about, just in terms of news and comments as far as what we're up to and thinking towards the future of ComicBase. Kind of the theme of the show, and there is a theme, is how to do a lot of little things better with the program and using ComicBase in life and stuff like that. So this isn't like a big idea show so much, but I do very much, in particular, if you have ideas on like what things are either annoying or just like, ah, man, I wish I could do this one thing with a little less annoyance or a little less effort. Post it to the show. I want to discuss as many of these as I can with you, and I also want to talk about some of the efforts we're doing right now with our next efforts as we go along, and we get a lot of good ideas. We're going to be following up a lot on some of the stuff we did last time with talking about updaters and installers and notifications to the program, things like that. We've actually done some work on some of these issues and had a lot of thoughts on it as we get into the process, and I want to kind of share some of that with y'all. But let's before we get to that, let's hit some of the other news here. So I mentioned last time we're pulling into our next release cycle. So the ComicBase 2020 is moving into, they call it maintenance mode. It's where you're less interested in building out new stuff into that release because you're starting to pile that into the next release. Still, little things might make it in, but mostly we're in the point where we just if there are any problems that crop up, we want to just solve them and move on so that we can focus our efforts towards the next big version. That said, I did come back from vacation, and there were a couple issues that had hit the hopper that I was like, well, let's have a look at those, and they were real things. So we did put out a update where I build 20.0.3.3774, if you can believe it, and it handles a couple of things. There's a fix for a little problem that cropped up late in the game, where after you print something, it might hide the main window depending on what you were doing. That's fixed. If you had ever chosen none as your cover icon size when you're printing an issue checklist, which I don't know why you'd ever want to do that. Well, all right, I do know why. You might want to just have the issue checklist not take up much space, because all those graphics do take up a lot of space. But if you did choose that as your option when saving that report to the web, it no longer has a little placeholder image, so that's better. The titles window is going to remember its position now, so if you open it in one screen, it'll be there when you open it again. And finally, saving a summary collection report. So if I have a collection report and I choose the summary option of just kind of a rundown of what I've got, and I try to save that to the web, that used to throw an error. It no longer does. So if you want that, if any of those appeal to you in any way whatsoever, all you got to do is go to comicbase.com, go to registrations, download the installer, install over whatever you're using, and you'll get all those, and that's all you got to do. So that's what we've been doing on kind of like the rearguard action stuff on ComicBase 2020 stuff this week. Then moving forward, what we're thinking of, and we talked about this last time, is some of the issues of well, how do we make some of the friction points in using ComicBase, how do we make them less bad? And one of the big ones, actually, before I get into that, let me just do a quick check of the chats, see how we're doing on this. Because, by the way, I'm using a new version of a program called H2R Graphics here to record. John over there did a terrific job. This is free software for doing graphics, to let you know what's going on things. And Greg says sound now and so forth. But the thing that I'm using here to queue up all these bits here is this H2R Graphics. New releases came out just this afternoon, and like an idiot, I installed it right before showtime. but does a terrific job. Really happy to see this. I want to give John all the props I can. It's, there's a lot of people just doing awesome software, and they deserve the credit on this. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about was when you do updates, how do we make it so that they are less awful to download? We pushed 20.0.3 as a forced update a couple weeks ago, and honestly, all things considered, it wasn't that bad for us. But anytime we have a customer call us up and say, "Hey, I'm trying to download this, I'm having this problem, that problem, or the other problem," look, whether it's user error or not, anything we can do to make that smoother is a good thing for us to try to do. And so we did want to work into that. And one really good idea that came up last time that someone suggested or we talked about was, is there some way we could make it so the updates happen more or less automatically? So we looked into that, and one problem that came up really quickly with that is when you download updates, we did a good thing last time out, is that we stopped doing patches. We just, updates are just full installs of the program. So if you download it, it always runs, it always gets you the latest version. You don't need to uninstall anything to install the new thing and so forth. The problem on that is that the updates got very large. And another secondary problem is the bandwidth. Even though we're on like gigabit, Ethernet over here, we're the fastest internet that money can buy for business in the area we're at. We're limited on our servers to about 35 gigabits up, which, I'm trying to do the math in my head right now. I want to say something like 20 times the speed that we used to shell out, almost $500 a month for back in, the Bay Area when we first, started hosting our own stuff. That's good, but on the other hand, we're pushing to a lot of people and we're pushing a lot of data. And so, anything we can do to make that speed go faster is a good thing for us. Well, we had some thoughts on both of these issues, and I think we might have something good in the works. Now, if you're on the Crystal Palace list and you have tried to download our experiments from today, you probably had some very mixed initial reactions on it, but it is going to get better. It is looking very promising. What we're basically thinking of doing is a ComicBase install is it's about, when I look at the numbers right, about 95% of the space of a ComicBase install is taken up by stuff that doesn't change that frequently. It's the stock database that comes with the program. It's certain picture files that are bundled in with it. It's it's basically resources that get used with the program, and the program code itself is, just in terms of disk size, is only, out of a 750 meg installer, so it might only be 35 megs or so. So what we've actually managed to do, and we ran a successful test on this, within the last hour or so, which is why the show's a little bit chaotic getting started, is we actually broke that into 2 installs that happen invisibly to you as a user. So if you download it, what happens is it first goes and says, have I installed all the pictures in the stock database and things like that? And if I've ever installed them, I'm good. I don't need to go and install them again. And after that, it just says, okay, well, what's new? And it installs just the new stuff, or just the program code that's new. And that, at least on my machine, I just ran a test on the Archive Edition, installed in like 14 seconds to download and get that installed. So that's good. It beats the hell out of the several minutes it required on before. And honest, weird thing is, the Express and the free versions are actually far worse in that regard in terms of trying to update, doing kind of update or installing a later version of it. Because with those versions, the pictures we have, they're actually bundled into the main installer themselves. And so the installer itself is about 1 gigabyte in size. It's huge. What we can do here is, if we get that out of the way once and we don't need to install it again, then going from version 20.0 to 20.0.1 or 20.0.2 or 20.0.3, these ones, instead of it being like a 20-minute process for those guys, depending on the speed of your computer, suddenly it's more like, again, like a minute. So that's a good thing. And I'm hoping what we can do, if we can, and we're still trying to iron out some of the fine points on this one, but I'm hoping we can do is get that so that it's fast enough that what we can do is have it so that ComicBase can automatically check for an update, and when it knows there's an update, download the 30, 40 megabytes of new stuff kind of in the background, and just let you know, hey, there's an update, it's installed, do you want me to run it next time you launch the program? You say yes, does the install, silently on, and just you're running the new one. So a lot more like updating your browser, if you've got like Firefox or something like that, a lot more like that than traditionally what a ComicBase install has been in the past. The first install still looks like it'll be pretty heavy. A couple of interesting things came up when we were talking to our installer, the makers of our installer software. There's tools we use to make ComicBase, and our guys are located in, geez, I want to say it's like Romania or something, but it's a company called Caffeon. They make just fantastic software for creating installers, and it's incredibly detailed. It's incredibly complex what can be done with this. But we had some talks with them over the last couple days, and there might even be some really cool things we can do involving the downloading of, say, picture archives and stuff like that, that maybe we can automate that a little more than we're doing. So we look forward to testing some of this stuff as we go out about in the next couple days or weeks. I don't know if this is going to be something that's part of a ComicBase 2020 install cycle, but some of it may make its way into a 2020 install cycle. So there might be a 2020 version 20.1 or something, or 20.0.4 or something that involves some of these technologies, if we need to set something up so that when you go to the next major version, so that it winds up being really crisp getting there. Stay tuned on that one. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, but I'd like to get that to be as just friction-free as we could possibly make it. So let me do a quick check of the chat right now. Okay. All right. So John. All right. So John, let's see. Let's pull up keys here. Sorry, I've got two different chat streams running, and I need to make sure I'm looking at the right one, because otherwise my life gets super confusing. And let's see here. Okay. Okay, just bounce out to a question here. John P says, "Made barcodes for my boxes so I could see what's in each one, but is it possible that when I scan my box, be able to tell me how many comics are in that box and how much that box is worth?" Interesting. John, can you tell me a little bit more? Write me back in the chat and tell me a little bit more about what you mean by a barcode for your box. And how are you scanning? Are you scanning with a phone, or how are you doing that? Because it's interesting that you've got a barcode on your box itself. I'm oddly fascinated by this. I really would like to hear more about that. If you don't mind typing up a little bit of a description in the chat, I would love to hear what you're doing. Beyond that, is it possible to get a report of what's in a box? Yes. The way you would do that in ComicBase, so ComicBase almost famously does not have a box number field built into it. There's a really good reason for it, and it's well, I don't know if it's productive to get into it, but let me, sorry, I'm just trying to bring up ComicBase on another screen here. I've got a couple different versions of it running right now, so give me just a moment. I'm just going to clobber the 2021 version I've got running in the background so that we can talk about this stuff while showing you stuff. Alright, so let me swap over to monitor number 2. Alright. Okay, so here's ComicBase. And let me go ahead and zoom this out to this monitor. Okay, cool. Hopefully everyone can see this alright. So anyway, so if you've got the Pro or the Archive versions of ComicBase, you've got custom fields. So you could go up under here, you'd go Setup, and then you go Custom Fields, and you could use these fields for anything you want. In this case, we've chosen custom field number 1 to be box number. It could be, who signed it. It could be, who I have it on consignment to. It could be anything you want. There's a certain point where we decided there's something like 76 or 77 fields per record in ComicBase just for comics. And we thought, God, as much information as we're tracking about it, we're never going to guess all the things people want to do with a given comic book. So let's just, offer the option of just giving you a number of just checkbox fields, which are just, I've got it, I don't have it, yes, no kind of things. Some fields that are just descriptive, like it could be just text. So it could be a box number, it could be, again, a signature, it could be, notes on, where I bought it from, or, what comic store or something like that. And then also custom dates. It could be, date I acquired it, the date I want to have it up for auction, whatever you want. We're not even going to try to guess. We'll let you decide what the fields mean. You just put them in right there, and then they appear in the list here as whatever you chose. So there isn't like a built-in field for box number, but you do have the ability to add one yourself if you wanted to, using the custom fields in the Pro and Archive editions. The Express and the free editions don't have that functionality. Anyway, so if you wanted to have a list of just what's in box number 53, what you would do is you'd come up under the Find menu, and you'd say, whoops, excuse me just a moment, and because welcome to test software. Okay, so oh goodness gracious. This might be one of those things where I've done myself in, because I'm showing you some stuff that isn't quite, this is what happens when you install stuff that isn't quite there, and then you try to show it. Of course, it tries to make you look bad, and it's. But anyway, what you would typically do in your copy of ComicBase, and not the test version that I'm running, is you would say find. You'd go to your item fields, and you'd say box number, and you would just say is number 23, and that would give you a list of everything that's in box number 23. If you wanted to then print the report, all you do then is highlight the list, and then come up and say quick report, or F7, and it would give you a report of everything that was in that box along with the total. That's a quick way to get there, just in the general. Now, that said, I'm very interested in what, if you wanted to have kind of a stock check or stock report kind of function, is there some way of making that a little slicker or more automated? So, yeah, John, tell us a little more about how you're doing your barcodes, and that might be an interesting jumping off point for some interesting stuff. Okay, and so John says, I'm making the die. I'm a label maker. Let me go ahead and put the comments on the screen. And use custom location field. Got it. And it gives it's in the box, but not Stolworth. If I'm not mistaken, and let me go ahead and put some in here, and I do a F7. Yeah, it should give you the total. Actually, that's, hey, that's a good one. It is not giving the total price on this one. I'm not entirely certain. I will look into that, but it is giving the total quantity. I'm not sure if we were meant to sum the price, but possibly we were, and if so, I'm going to check that out. Thanks. We got one to work into. Maybe it'll be a build 3744 next time out, but we'll look into that. Interesting. Okay, cool. All right. So thank you, John, for calling us on that one. But yeah, I'm also interested in seeing what other things we could do. Yeah, I am. So one thing that maybe some of you know is that at one point we looked into the possibility of doing a commercial version of ComicBase geared towards comic stores. What winds up happening is a lot of comic stores use our software, but we looked at what was involved with doing software for a comic store in a real basis, going beyond just like the very simple point of sale, even type of support we've got now, and doing the sorts of things that stores do, like cycle counting and cash register reconciliation and things like that. We looked at it and saw how idiosyncratic it was, and also looked at how difficult to be able to sell into that space for a decent amount of money, and we kind of ran away from the opportunity screaming. No lie, it's the hottest software in that whole space was celebrating that they had just sold their 300th copy, and it was like, whew, 300 copies, man, you got to be able to sell it for a lot if that's the space you're in, and that's hard to do. So anyway, we didn't go in there. That said, I've always had a soft spot for doing things that are useful, but not necessarily committing to that space. So if you wanted to have a report for something like inventory, like stock checking or something like that, I'd be interested in exploring that if there was an interest in it. every once in a while when I'm filling orders, just myself, I've had my collection for a really long time, I'll realize over the years something just got misfiled, it got put in the wrong place, maybe someone took it out and didn't mark it, whatever the deal is, but something won't be where it should be, and I'll be like, darn this, and I'll want to go and have a quick way to check over, like, say, an entire box and see if the inventory is all where it should be and there's nothing extra and nothing missing. I'd be interested in how interesting that is for other folks. And if there is a lot of interest in that, then maybe we could explore some ways of building some support for that sort of thing into a future version. Let me know in the chat if that's like something that people would if we gave if there was a report or an app or something like that where it was essentially like a check over inventory kind of thing, if that would be useful for someone. Similarly, if there was something like a what's in this box canned report, if that's something that a lot of people would use, let me know. I'd be curious. Okay, let's see here. What other things we got going on? Okay, so other things that we are already looking at doing for future versions. As a matter of fact, it's already in the draft versions we have going of what's coming up. I want to get rid of the recalculation that happens automatically when you exit the program. This happens once a day. You might have noticed it just once a day. It just says updating totals. What it's doing right there is it's just making sure your stats are fresh, that nothing got overlooked in the calculations. For instance, the price calculation I just did there might be something that's causing that not to update right, or it just might be a bug on the report. But either way, that's something we want to make sure is forced to recalculate as often as it needs to be. So that happens in the new version. But at the same time, I don't want to wait for that. So when I exit the program, you guys might remember from the tips, the speed show from a little while ago, if you hold down the shift key while exiting the program, it bypasses like the saving backups and compacting and anything else that you had, due to happen at program shutdown. It just quick gets you out. Well, one of the things it bypasses also is that daily check to make sure we've updated your stats recently. What we're doing instead is we're making sure we calculate those at least once a day as part of Sidekick. Sidekick is running all the time just to make sure that you're up to date and all your collection is going. We thought, well, this is a good thing to throw. If Sidekick is basically our monkey assistant for getting stuff done in ComicBase, we thought, well, this is a good job to throw to the monkey assistant. I mean, if it's something that you would have someone who runs coffee for you do, this is a good job for Sidekick. So that's one of the things we're doing in coming up. So we talked a little bit about installers and updaters. We are looking to have them be auto updating. And we also talked about making them smaller so that if they do update, making it so that they can download it in the background and you just click, or it's already if you told it to automatically update you, just like with apps on your phone. If you guys remember, even just a couple of years ago with like Android and iOS, the default on your phone is that it would say you have 37 apps that all need an update, or that all have updates available. Do you want to do it? And probably if you're like us, you read what's new about 20 times and then eventually said, sure, whatever, I'm tired of just reading, it'll be better, and you just click update all. I think that's going to be more and more the mode that folks are in. If that's true, then what we want to do is at least give you an option to keep the program automatically updated. And if it's not something that you do automatically, at least make it so it's one click to update it, and not like, click here to download the program, then exit the program, then double click the installer, then click a few more times to install it, then relaunch the programming. We can do better than that, and so we're going to try to. All right. And, we also, as we're downloading things, one thing that we're working on right now is we're trying to make it so when you do download, there's less dialogues in the way, there's less permission. You guys, it's called an elevation dialog. It's you might have all seen these things where it flashes a little shield at the bottom of your screen. It says, do you want to allow the user human computing to make changes to your machine, to install system files or whatever the thing is. But a lot of times, people not notice that Windows is off, asking for permission to do stuff. And as a result, they get halfway through the install and they're like, what happened? It just hung there because there's a blinking shield icon at the bottom of their screen. They don't realize it's been sitting there waiting for them to click yes. We're going to see what we can do to make that part a little smoother. We can't override Windows's permissions behavior. That's a security built into Windows, is to keep you from unintentionally installing viruses. but we can probably do some things to make it so that if it's gotta ever hit that sort of thing, that it hits you right at the beginning, right when you're paying attention still, before it gets halfway through and then has to ask you. So we're looking on making that stuff a little smoother. And then let's talk faster downloads. Some folks came in, I want to say it was Andre, had thrown up kind of a really interesting idea of, could you take these huge files we've got, whether it's the picture files that come with the archive edition, the installer images themselves, if you're talking about the Express or whatever else, could you make these somehow work over a torrent? And looked into this a little bit, did a little investigation just in terms of marketplace. I'm thinking, torrent probably isn't going to be our sweet spot in terms of passing around those sorts of files. I mean, there might be something we can do that helps get things around by torrent. Torrent is short for BitTorrent. It's a file protocol for sharing things. It gets a little geeky. I mean, let's face it. It's a little harder than just downloading stuff. It requires a bit more knowledge. Sometimes there's special programs. You could, in theory, build some of the stuff into the program itself. But man, if we think we're having trouble right now troubleshooting people's network settings, when they call us up for support, that is nothing compared to where we'd be if we were troubleshooting, BitTorrent on people's browsers. But anyway, one thing that would be interesting though is if we're talking about moving our installers over to if we take the parts that don't change much, and also like the stock database, which the stock database for the archive edition compressed is like 350 megabytes right there, just by itself. And some of these graphic files that get installed automatically, the flags for the different nations, the logos for the different comic companies, all the stuff that's got to be there, but it's not, it doesn't change too much once you ship it the first time. If we could make that separate than the program itself, and we offload it literally in some cases in 95% of the overall bulk of the install, if we can put that into a different place, well, one of the things we can do is we don't need to host that ourselves. And so we've been looking at different services. So right now I mentioned that where our servers are at right now, we're capped at 35 gigabytes upload speed, which again, gigabits, which sounds like it ought to be tons. It is, unless there's just a ton of people hitting it at the same time. But one thing we can do is, if that stuff is divorced from the main program, is it becomes more feasible for us to locate that stuff on someone else's server. And there are actually a number of different services we've looked into now, and we're going to do some experiments, in the coming weeks, with moving some of those other those big installer files over to places where we can install them and take advantage of, they're called content delivery networks, CDNs, if you guys have ever heard that abbreviation. You guys might have ever downloaded something and seen it said like Akamai or something as part of the URL, and you're like, Akamai, what the heck? I just downloaded something from Microsoft. What am I doing on Akamai? What these things are is they're companies that specialize in having just tons and tons of servers located all over the world, really, and they have methods of splitting the load up and staging the load of all these downloads close to where people are going to want to download them to, and also if the server gets too heavy, of splitting it automatically between different servers so that you can always have access to the most data as fast as possible. And they're just in the business of distributing content. Now, generally what these guys offer is complete overkill for what we need, and also it comes with a cost. It does run up the bills a bit, and running up the bills means it also runs up the price of what we're selling, especially if we're pushing a lot of bits down the line. That said, there are some services that we're looking into that look pretty darn promising as far as giving us a reasonable rate that we would pay for essentially unlimited service of a few files. So we're not serving millions and millions of picture files with these guys. We're serving a few big installer files, or maybe a few big picture archive files. And if we can get unlimited download of that based on these CDNs with your gigabit plus download speeds, that might really make a difference for us in terms of being able to get that stuff out to you guys, and in a really tolerable way. So we're looking at that right now, and we'll keep you posted, but it's looking pretty promising just at the moment. Like anything else, you got to run tests on it before you know what you're getting into. One thing we did you guys might remember about a year ago when we first released ComicBase 2020 is, suddenly we had the entire user base was upgrading to ComicBase 2020 all at once. And they were downloading, again, these gigabyte installers. And we thought, well, hey, something that's working out for us pretty well is we'll put some of these installers, or some of the picture files, we'll locate them on a Dropbox link, and we'll make the Dropbox link be the install link. Because it's just a big, long, complicated URL. What could it hurt, right? And that worked great for like 11 or 12 hours. After about 11 or 12 hours, what happened is we got a note. Well, first of all, our phone started ringing off the hook saying that, I'm getting a 404 error when I'm trying to download the file. I looked at my email and I got a note from Dropbox, who I'd always got along with fine. But suddenly they're mad at me and they said, hi, you've exceeded your bandwidth. You're only allowed, however many terabits of data in a certain period of time. I want to say it was, I don't know, like 200 gigabytes or something in a 24-hour period or something. But apparently we blew past that in like no time flat. Just when everyone started downloading ComicBase 2020. And this is the first time we ever heard that Dropbox had a data rate limit. But the way we found out about it is because they shut us off. At which point we had to scramble like the dickens to find other ways to host it. We had to throw it back onto Amazon. Everything got super slow. It was like, it was a nightmare. We tried it one more time. That shut down. We thought, well, it's a fluke, right? What could happen, right? That shut down even quicker than the first time, but at least this time we were a little bit ready. So within about 3 days, we decided Dropbox is not going to be our way of distributing anything. We love Dropbox. They do a lot of good work for us, but in terms of like putting, forward-facing links of software out to the world, that was a mistake. That said, there are companies that actually are specializing in this sort of thing, and a few of them, it looks like, might have the magical combination of fast pipes, fast bandwidth, unlimited data rates, and money we can afford to put that out there. That makes the whole thing make sense for us. So looking forward to doing that. So that's a thing. Let's do a quick check of the chat before we go further on this. And let me where is my cursor? There it is. Okay, cool. All right, so let's see here. Jason says, I think we're talking about the box here. Jason's saying that he'd be very interested in what that's all about. Garrett says, how do I download covers? Did this previous version option doesn't seem to work in the current version? Simplicity itself, Garrett. All you gotta do, click the far left. Click at the far left. That's anything that operates on the row as a whole. You want to click on the far left to activate it, and at that point, if you right click, you'll see download cover lights up, as well as all the other options that apply to the row as a whole. If you're just clicking a random cell in the row, what you're doing only applies to that cell, or for that matter, that range of cells, which is a thing now. Because this has come up before, I realize this is a friction point for us going from older versions to now. But it's something where we got on the same behavior that Excel uses, but what we gave up about it was the automatic selection of rows. Basically, just if you need to select the row, just click at the far left is all it comes down to, and then you can download covers. All right. Let's see. John says, crash ComicBase today by actually, let me go back to the keys here. John says, crash ComicBase today by actually scanning a barcode in a quantity cell. Oops, guess it doesn't mean you have a billion copies. So you shouldn't have been able to crash it, but if you could give us the barcode you used, I'd be curious to know how to make that happen reliably. We actually... So one of the things that used to happen a lot to people in ComicBase is people would they call us up and say like, hey, I like your program, everything's going well, except that it now says my collection is worth $1 trillion. At which point we would know that one of two things had happened. Either they had scanned a barcode into their quantity field somewhere, or they'd scanned a barcode into their value field somewhere. Because a barcode at its heart is just a really long number. There's nothing magical to the code itself. The only thing that makes barcodes magical is knowing what every code corresponds to on the back end in terms of comic books. But the number itself, and I think we got into this on a previous podcast, tells you very little by itself. Anyway, what happens sometimes is people will just be using the barcode scanner because as far as your computer's concerned, your barcode scanner is just a keyboard, right? So it's as if you just monkey typed whatever that number is on wherever your cursor was. So if you're scanning with your barcode scanner and your cursor just happens to be in a quantity field or just happens to be in a value field, it puts a huge number in there. Now, one of the things we did in ComicBase 2020 is we knew that this was something that comes up, and so we try pretty hard that if we're expecting a value kind of in the range of, I don't know, between 0 and, $10 million, and we suddenly see a value come in there that's like in the billions or trillions, we kind of give you a beep and an oopsie, and I think you just scanned a barcode in here. Did you really mean it? We kind of try to go through that dance and kind of back it up from where you were. Now it could be because some of these things are a little twitchy. I mean, just in terms of like when you're updating like a quantity, it does a lot of and if I'm in the grid and I change a quantity, it might have implications as to whether that title just went in stock or not. It might need to be computing something hither and yon and so forth, depending on where the different things fired. In terms of whether it looks like you moved on to the next cell because it saw that Control J that's at the end of the barcode or something before it could process something else. I could absolutely see it getting into a situation where it would throw a snit on you. That said, if I can make it reproduce the snit, I want to make the snit go away, because crashing is bad. What I'm really trying to have ComicBase do at that point is have it beep at you and then go back to what it was doing, and so you can say, oops, no, I guess the barcode shouldn't have been in there. Not have you have to relaunch the program. You're never going to lose data, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, crashing is bad, so if you do find a way to reliably crash the program, no matter what it is, just support@comicbase.com, and we will try our best to make sure that doesn't happen again. All right, let's see here. And Steve pointed out that about the Liftmost box. Thanks, Steve. All right, let's see here. All right, and thanks, Pete and Steve. All right, so that is where we're on that. So 439. So I'm actually thinking for once in my life we might wrap the show a little bit on the early side today. So I only have a little bit more stuff I want to get through myself. So if you guys do have questions, please fire them off in the chat. I want to answer as many as I can right now. Last several shows we've been running long, and so, hey, I'm in the middle of stuff. I'm happy to wrap up early if we don't have anything super pumped to get to, but I do want to give you your Showtime viewing money worth out of this whole thing if we possibly can. So like I say, feel free to ask questions in the chat. All right, other things that I had people ask me about. Two things. What do you guys think of having there essentially be a beta channel for updates? So let me show you what I'm talking about. In Windows, they have the idea that when in your profile, it's probably a profile saying that or impacts on you at comicbase.com. But the idea is that when I go under the internet menu and I say check for updates, right now it's going to say I'm up to date, right? I have the most current version, my content's up to date, and so forth, right? But this isn't the very, very, very latest version of the software. There are versions that we're always cranking all the time with just little things that are different. What do you guys think if you are interested? I don't want to bug everyone with this. Right now, you only get a notice of there being a new update when there's something, when there's a major version. So, for instance, when we go from version 20.0.3 to 20.0.4, wow, this is crazy. I'm seeing the switcher is kind of like losing sync right now. Are you guys getting flickering in on the screen, or is it just my monitor that's doing that? I'm not seeing it. I'm sort of glancing off at the oh nope, there it goes. Wow, we're losing some live stream. Yeah, probably a good thing if I sort of shut things down here in a bit, because I think we're getting a little twitchy. Sorry for the flickering on that one. Let's see if it gets a little better if I switch back to me. Okay, so let's see how that goes. Yeah, that's kind of odd. Anyway, so hopefully we restore video here in a second. Anyway, so what do you guys think of, for the people who are interested in this sort of thing, of knowing what is new all the time, of us providing essentially either a developer channel or a beta channel where you could say, look, don't just tell me all the full, really important, crucial versions you've got, but also let me know whenever you've got anything new that is, maybe just a little putsy bug fix. Is that something that would be interesting to folks, or is that just overkill and you can just check the website whenever you want? Because at the top of the website, we also tell people when there's new putty versions. But if that's something you'd like to see in the program, let me know, because I think that'd be something I'd be interested personally in making happen. I think it'll certainly help us when we're talking about building out the next version of ComicBase, where, at least for the folks in that scene, we're constantly putting out new stuff. And so that might help them keep on top of things. All right, and then last question I had is, and I was thinking about this when I was getting the update for my phone the other day. So I have a Samsung Galaxy S9. I guess Samsung put out their own new interface features for the phone, and it will as well got coordinated with Android 10. First time in a long time, they had so many new features on my phone that they put out not just a little pay, there are new features for your phone, with bug fixes and security improvements. That thing that we get with all our updates for all our devices that we all kind of look at and say, yeah, you fix some stuff. Okay, go. This is one where they'd actually apparently spent a lot of time trying to educate all the people in the world about what was new and cool about the whole thing. And I was interested in how they did it. I'll admit, I was also interested in the fact that if I wasn't on vacation and feeling really a little bit bored, I probably would have blown them off. And then I would just been playing with my phone one day and be like, hey, where'd that icon come from? Question for y'all is, how do you guys like to hear about new features? I mean, there's stuff we can do right here where I can show stuff as we go, and I can try to convince you that what we're doing is kind of neat and important and stuff like that. I don't know how well that scales to the universe at large, right? I mean, it's like, you guys are probably the most committed, and this, as they would say, high information folks out there, right? You're actually going out seeking new stuff. One thing we used to do, and this was in line with other I used to when I used to work at Apple, I used to work in the interface group with very closely with the guys who did tech pubs, technical publications. And one of the really depressing things they used to tell us is that something like 1.5% of people, it was like between 1.5% and 3% was the number they kept on throwing around, would ever read the manual. And so think about these guys, they're professional writers. They're really some of the best writers in the business. If you've ever read an Apple manual, as tech writing goes, it's a thing of beauty. And 97 out of 100 people were never going to crack that darn thing. And so you're just kind of throwing the effort away as far as most people are concerned. And that's where it became for the program to teach you how to use it in most cases. Now, there's things I can do as a designer that at least put things in front of you, right? I can, they call it making a feature apparent, where if a new icon just shows up on your screen one day, especially if it's blinking at you or something, you're probably going to click it and find out, try to find out what it does. But if it's something a little subtler, like that problem with clicking the rows, right, instead of just individual cells. I could look at that and justify that all day long, saying, well, that's the way Excel works, you ought to know it, we were doing it wrong before, blah, 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 blah. I might have all sorts of really good computery reasons for telling you that this is how it goes, and I'm sure you'll figure it out, right? But anytime I see that a number of people have the same kind of problem, I know that at the end of the day, it's my problem as a guy, making the software, is I haven't taught you how to do that very well. The program, it didn't teach you itself how to do it very well. So if I throw a new feature in there that is, I don't know, something that, makes a box report for you or something like that, I've got to find some way of communicating that to y'all that you're going to find and you'll hopefully appreciate and say, oh, this is neat, I get how to use this, and I get that there's a new thing here. And one of the problems with doing that with a big program like ComicBase, is that there start being a lot of little nooks and crannies to the program itself. It'd be like, oh, well, you didn't see that. It was buried under the third preference dialog, under the second submenu of the whatever. I mean, ComicBase isn't generally that bad, but the deeper the program gets, the more that gets to be a risk. I had somebody just the other day say, hey, I want to see view just my comics. Well, how do I do that? And I know I pissed the guy off, because I started going into a thing, well, there's about 12 ways you could do it. You could say view only owned issues. You could do find for my comics. You could, it's like, I was off to the races trying to explain this to the guy, and I could tell I was just annoying him. I wish, if you're that guy on the podcast, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. But there's a number of problems. One is, he wasn't able to find it himself, which is a real problem. And then the other part is, just how do you communicate what the features of the program are? So sometimes sometimes I've got a way where I can put a big blinking thing in front of you, or a big, hopefully not too obnoxious thing in front of you, and say, oh, there's a button there I didn't see before. Let me click it and see what happens. That's pretty good. But when you guys have to do something where, like on the phone, this was a real problem. Samsung had added a whole bunch of behaviors to, like, the camera, where if you press and hold the focus trigger, you could move it to different parts of the screen, so you could get to it with your thumb. So if your hand's not crooked exactly right, it's more comfortable if I'm holding the phone in a different orientation. But there are all sorts of neat things like that, where like once you discover it, like, oh, hey, that's neat, but they're not apparent, right? So when the feature isn't necessarily going to be able to teach you itself how to get there, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's just not enough space on the screen, or if you put it on the screen, it'd be too obnoxious. How do you guys prefer to hear about new features that you didn't know before? Do you like podcasts? Do you like, video introductions? There's people have tried doing things like, when you launch the program the first time, it's got a couple of little ads that just start up. We tried this with digital comics when we first introduced those. Say, hey, ComicBase now handles digital comics, and we had a little graphic that shows you how do you do it and so forth. I'll be honest, I didn't really get the impression that was super successful for us. So we tried a number of things, but some of it, we need to find something that meets your own learning style. So what have you guys seen that works out well for you, or that you'd be like, oh yeah, I totally, when people have new stuff to tell me, I totally learn about it by doing blah. Or do you? I guess my gut tells me is that a lot of people just kind of go about and use the stuff that they do, and if they happen to find it, that's great. But if they don't, what's it hurting them? Maybe that's true. Maybe I'm wrong. What do people think? And let me read the comments for a moment and see what people say. Oh yes, flickering blinks black, Pete. Better. Okay. I'm gonna see if maybe we had a. I'm gonna see if maybe we had a fuzzy cable or something, or honestly, maybe my switcher just needed a rest. It is getting a little hot in the room that I'm at right now, so I'll look into it. Okay, so let's see here. Tours your office shelves. So Greg says, finally wrapping up early. One day I want to give a tour of the whole thing. I want to do that too. So there's a thing, and hopefully you guys get I'm having fun doing these ones just because it's a little bit of a train set for me to play with as well. Just all the video stuff. There's a toy called an NDI camera, a network digital interface is what I'm going to guess what it stands for. But the idea is that I can take, my iPhone or something. Oops. I can take my iPhone or something like that, and that I could walk around wherever I am, and it transmits wirelessly a digital signal back to home base. In this case, a switcher that lets me essentially move things on the road. Right now, where I'm at right now, I've got you can't see a lot of this stuff, but I've got an overhead camera right here pointing. My finger is. I got an overhead camera that points down at my keyboard, so you can see what I'm, things I'm typing. I've got a forward-facing camera, straight on me. I've got, a off-screen green screen thing, which is doing the compositing of different chroma keys and stuff like that. And then I've finally got the fourth input I've got on my switcher is actually to an Apple TV device. And the reason I did that is because you can actually take things on a phone or an Android or whatever else, and share them to the Apple TV, and then I can show you the Apple TV. That works out really well if I need to do things like showing you features of the mobile apps. So that's why I'm doing that. But I would like to do one more, which is I would like the ability to walk around and just essentially just walk this through and just show you the 360 of the room, or it's like, okay, let's talk about filing comic books. I can take you to where my comics are filed and talk about stuff like that. I'd like to get that running. It's probably a couple 3 weeks out. I did hear some new apps that might be able to do that more effectively than the ones I was looking at right now. The problem I've got right now is that the apps for doing it are like $100. It's like, and then you're paying $100 on the Apple TV side, which it has its app, and you pay it on the device itself. And it's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me! Is that really? Is there not a better way? I'm looking into that. But yes, I would like to give you all the tour as well. Okay. Should have a guest appearance by Atomic Atom Support. My better half. Yes. Possibly. Carolyn's a little shy. It's she just kind of does a very competent job as Atomic Avenue administrator, and we compare notes from time to time, but she just tells me when we screwed up things that are making Atomic Avenue's life miserable, and then we try to fix them for her. But anyway, it says, Greg says, yes, she is indeed intrepid. I would agree with that as well. Okay, so Mike says it would also help you see what's working for all of us. Definitely as well. Okay, Rob says we like the beta available in the internet menu. So what I'm thinking about that, Rob, is I'm thinking that it would basically be a choice that maybe you set the preference within the program, but I think probably you'd set the preference. I guess I'm modeling this on the way that Microsoft does it, of saying when you go to say Windows Update, you can choose whether or not you want to see updates for beta things or developer channels. That's part of your account there. But basically, it would be something where you'd set it once, but it would have an implication on your profile with, in Microsoft's case with them, but your profile with us. So if you were, it wouldn't be specific to a particular database. It'd be something where you would just say, yeah, hey, tell me about beta stuff, and then no matter what database you're working with, it would just always tell you about beta stuff. So that's we're thinking of it. An Atomic Avenue episode. I'd like to see that at some point. So Atomic Avenue, there's a wall between that, the two companies in terms of that stuff, because as somebody put it, it's like Atomic Avenue, I have to add, I get to stick my fingers in the pie a lot, but at the same time I have to ask a lot of other people for permission, and ComicBase I don't. But yes, I would love it if Atomic Avenue wanted to do stuff like that. I'm not sure who's the face of that would be, because in a way, what's Atomic Avenue? It's a bunch of code and a bunch of servers and a bunch of people who keep it running. But there isn't. It isn't. The software side isn't like what we're doing with ComicBase. I guess it's not quite as active on that thing. It's just kind of like, well, who runs eBay? Well, it's there's a bunch of people who sit in a building. There's a bunch of people who will answer your calls if you got a PayPal dispute. But who speaks for eBay? I'm not sure. So yeah, but I would love to see it. And definitely, one thing I do want to explore is after we get done with the next version of ComicBase, I would like to talk more about the ComicBase Atomic Avenue interface, because there are some things that we do in combination with those folks that are actually I'm actually pretty psyched about, and that's just me wanting to sell my own comics. I'm like, oh hey, so how do we help you make that happen? Because that would really help me. And so I'm stoked to see that. So yeah, at some point, hopefully we can get that going in the future. Like to know what, so Greg says, like to know what package weight and shipping method AA uses to calculate the shipping charges. I can actually tell you that because it's actually done through ComicBase. So what happened is in ComicBase is, and this is a little better now because we have the concept of books versus magazines versus comic books, is every one of the 860,000 items in the database has a weight field. That weight field is not known for the vast majority of them because we haven't actually taken 860,000 things and weighed them. But what we do have is a pretty decent algorithm. It's pretty dang close for the vast majority of items. And that there's a separate field called the estimated weight. And so when the weight field is not filled in, then we take the estimated weight. And the estimated weight is basically like a standard comic book. It assumes that by the time I stuck the backing board in there and the bag, the backing board, and whatever else, that's going to weigh like 3.4 ounces. Plus a certain amount if it has a certain number of pages, that go up. So in other words, so you'll notice that the price or the weight that it estimates goes up the more the cover price goes up, which sounds stupid. It sounds like this shouldn't work at all, and it works ridiculously well for the vast majority of books. Now, where it doesn't work are things like, and these are a little better than they used to be, but where it doesn't work are, matter of fact, I just shipped off a ton of them today. Some guy just ordered, and they cost $14.95 each, or I think I sold them for $15 each, but he bought a bunch of the Showcase Presents trade paperbacks. And that is the extreme end of the number of pages you get for your cover price in terms of weight. Other things it doesn't work particularly well for are things like Marvel Treasury editions. You know, remember those comic books that were like this big and they had cover prices of like $1.50? With those ones, over the years, we tend to have been burned on them enough times that someone said, dude, you know, you made your guess on the weight. I can't ship it for that weight. Put something real in there. And we actually went and took the time and got the information to weigh it out and see what would it actually cost to actually weigh this thing. And so in those things, if you look at the database, the weight field is actually filled in. And so those problems go away as we find them. But what we're doing, you know, we can guesstimate magazines differently than we can guesstimate books. We can guesstimate, you know, big things, you know, differently than we can guesstimate small things. But when things are just outliers, you know, it's a very cheap thing that's also a very heavy thing, really helps to let us know what the actual weight is. We just pushed a bunch of changes this last week. I knew because a guy in Australia, I want to say, ordered one of these Marvel previews from me. It was like, you know, those things that are just like this thick and they're like 99 cents. And I literally couldn't ship it to him for the price that it cost. At which point that got handled immediately for all the Marvel previews. It's like we actually got actual weights in there. But there are 860,000 comic books in the database, and a limited number of people want to stick those on scales. So best thing you can do right now is when you do find things that are wrong, send us the information on those. We will get them weighed in and put the real data in there. And whenever real data is available, it overrides the estimate. So that's probably the best we've got right now. It's not great. We're doing what we can, but that's where Atomic Avenue gets the information from. They get it from us. So I'll take the hit on that one. Okay, Rob says, I like a PDF to see features. Question, for anyone who is a manual reader or an alleged manual reader, do you ever read the whole manual comprehensively, or are you mostly reading get started guides, you know, like what's new guides? Or alternately, I would say, do people kind of, you know, scan the index, find the very thing that you're having a problem with, and then bounce out as quickly as possible? Which, I'll be honest, from what I know of tech writing, that is the common usage, you know, pattern for manuals. But in particular, I guess what I'm wondering about is how do I best communicate new features to people? If, you know, is the what's new, is that the most helpful way for you, or is there something else? Slider says videos on YouTube. Excellent. And by the way, that's one thing that I also want to do more of. It's you guys are probably getting that I'm getting pretty time crunched. This is the part of the year where we get pretty heads down and just dig in and just pound on code. I like it because we can take on things that were really bugging us. The downside is it's a lot of long nights and late nights. But one of the things I still want to do, and one of the reasons I wanted to do these videos to start with, I had this dream. In this dream, I did not go into weird rambles at all. I was super concise. When people ask a question, I would give like this 90-second long, completely cogent, you know, answer to the whole thing, which then, in my dream, I would snip up into a little thing, stick a cool thumbnail on it, and that would become a YouTube video, which then people could search for and find it. Having done this 10 times now, and being the guy I am, I have had days when I'm more lucid than other days. I have had days when I am less rambly than other days. But one thing I have never had is a time when I've given a cogent 90-second answer to exactly the question being asked and demonstrated it clearly, you know, in a way that I would want to snip up for a video. So I think what my plan is to take kind of like the greatest hits from this and other questions that people have a lot of interest in, and actually just stage those things. In other words, actually have a producer in the room that can handle the camera switching for me, make sure the microphone's turned on before you get going, make sure that the screen's not flickering, and then just knock out a bunch of these in a row and post them up as videos. But I do want to do that. It probably won't be for a couple of weeks, even in my best case. But I would like to see that. And honestly, if you guys have ideas as far as like what videos you'd like to see just quick hits on, and by this I mean like 3 minutes and under, um, you know, let me know what you'd like to see, and we'll knock out as many of these as we can. Because I get the feeling that if we're on our game and this is just what we're doing today, we could bust a bunch of those out during the day. But it would have to be that's the only thing we're doing right now. So let me know. All right. Let's see. John also says video is the way you like things. Okay. Jeff, a link in the app to a website summarizing the features, both video and text. Excellent. Question for folks. When we post things like the forums, if you had a video link to a tutorial of it, you know, and so here's how you do it, would you guys click it? You know, because again, it requires a little effort, but again, I mean, there is actually the semblance of a plan behind all this, which is the idea that, like, if you do have these quick hit kind of videos of like, here's how you know, make a box number, here's how you know, make a list of the comics that you've got in a box, whatever the thing is, something that we can't make so obvious in the program that it just answers itself. You know, here's how you use advanced finds or things like that. If there's something where we had a little blah 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 about what the feature is and stuff like that, and there was a link to a here is it demoed, and we pointed to that YouTube, would that be of interest to folks? Because if so, that moves up the priority chain in terms of what we try to do. Oreo says searchable PDF. Mike, two-tiered approach, introductory text, link to deeper instructions. Yeah, I agree. That's the right way to do it. I worry it gets us into manual writing. And you guys probably noticed that there wasn't a proper manual with ComicBase 2020. Part of that is because I'd been working 16-hour days for as long as I could remember. I mean, just months and months on end. And when I sat there and I thought, gee, we have like a 1.5% open rate on our last manual, which actually wasn't all that bad. It doesn't encourage you to say, and now we're going to delay the product for another month while we write a manual. Our plan, and this might have been a dumb plan. You know, I do a lot of dumb things. I'll admit it. But our plan was to essentially do the equivalent of, gosh, I want to say, was it Cambridge? There's a legend in learning theory, and I'll say it was Cambridge Yard. Some old stuffy, you know, British, you know, university that's about 1 million years old. They were laying out, and they asked the groundsman, it's like, well, where should the paths be in between the buildings? And the architect says, well, I'll tell you in spring, because what we're going to do right now is we're going to open up for classes. We're going to let the students tromp anywhere they need to go to get to places, and wherever the grass is trampled, that's where we'll build the paths. And that's the legend of how it went. And it's a legend, almost certainly. If it's real, let me know. But if it is a legend, it's a really good one. It does strike me as a really good way to find out where's the interest on stuff, is when you see where people are stumbling a lot, or where you see that they're, you know, that they're having a lot of action, that's where you want to put your effort in terms of teaching, you know, of putting the instruction, or putting the, of essentially making it very comfortable to get between, you know, point A and point B on. We didn't know, we changed so much stuff with ComicBase 2020 that other than like the what's new list, we didn't know what to say for a lot of the stuff. I mean, some of the stuff we eventually got around to documenting in the help sections, at least, you know, in a very rough form. It took us a while, but our approach, at least to start with, was saying, all right, well, let's throw the whole thing out there. Let's try to make it as clean as we can from an interface standpoint so you could find it. But after that, let's see what people ask us questions about, and we'll, you know, build bigger features or build bigger discussions around that. So yeah, I agree with you in principle. I do want to say, you know, here's the cursory, here's how you do it, and then here's linking to more information. One thing I guess I don't want to do is write a 400-page manual that tries to describe every feature in great detail, because I just know it's not going to get read and it'll drive me crazy. Plus, you got to keep it updated, which every time you change anything, suddenly, you know, it has documentation debt, and it's like, ah, man. Okay, John likes Mike's suggestion. Awesome. Okay, yes, I agree, long overdue. Let's see here, let's get down here. Greg says, links with the app to brief video. Better than graphic, expands your channel output. Agree. There is actually a facility in Windows applications that's where you could hit F1 from a lot of dialogues, and it would take you to the help pages. And the last time we went and we did a big online help text manual, we went to a lot of effort. I mean, there were just like, I want to say close to 200 link points in there where you could say, what's the setting? And our thought was that you would hit F1 and we'd link you to exactly the right place in the manual to find out about it. And unfortunately, to the extent that we were able to instrument how much that got used, it didn't. So either we did a crummy job of communicating it or not. I'm really drawn to that idea, though. Maybe this means I'm a slow learner and I never learn. But I mean, again, I think the general pattern when people want to learn anything is take me from the part where I'm confused to how do I get out as quickly as possible is generally how you get there. But yeah, I guess I want to explore a lot of different areas to get there. So I do appreciate the input, though. So I got to think on this stuff. Yeah, cold talk, Pete. I'll just call you. Thanks, Andre. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. All right. John says my magazine barcodes won't scan in. Always have to do a manual search. Make sure your scanner is configured to read. I want to say the big magazine barcodes are EAN13, which is the same as comics, which is a standard. I want to say the other one is it's called Bookland. But I want to say either starting at 977 or 978. Make sure your scanner is configured properly to do both of those. If it's one of our scanners and you use the default settings, it should work fine. If it's not working, send us the particular item you're scanning and the barcode that it's not scanning, and just write it out for us, and maybe we can cast light on it, or maybe we can go into it. There are a lot of barcode standards in the world, and some of them aren't, don't do their thing. Oh, I'm sorry, let me qualify one other thing. If it's the kind of barcode for especially an older style magazine where they don't, where it is it's called an EAN13, it's the same kind of barcode used on comic books, but it doesn't include what's called the supplemental, the small digits at the far right, which in comic books include the issue number. If it's got the basic grouping on it, and I think it's usually 13 characters long, but no supplemental on the right, the default setting in the ComicBase barcode scanner is to actually reject those entirely. It's actually to intentionally not scan those, and that's to prevent it from treating a partial scan of a comic book as being valid. It prevents misscans. If you do a lot of scanning and that's your situation, and at least with the ComicBase scanner, there's an advanced page. Just flip over your barcode scanner page and use the advanced settings. And what that does is it resets that setting to accept scans that don't have the supplemental. That will take care of your problem with magazines. The price that it will come at, so why didn't we do it by default, is it comes at the price of increased numbers of misscans for things that do have supplementals, but for whatever reason, a trick of the light, you held your scanner just a little funny, your scanner just not feeling it that day, it caught the main code and it didn't catch the supplemental. On a comic book, that's death. On a magazine, maybe that's fine, or at least on your magazine, maybe that's fine. And also, there's a couple of publishers still, and I do mean like a couple, that still have the same kind of barcode you'd put on a can of soup. And they're using it for periodicals. They're really using the wrong kind of symbology. But this does allow you to scan those. What I do personally, I use the basic setup on my barcode scanner, and if there's a code that won't scan after I hit it a couple times, I just hand type it in. But if you have a lot of one type of item and and it doesn't have a supplemental and you want to scan those in, just use the other setup on the ComicBase barcode scanner or on your barcode scanner if you're not using ours. You want to change the setting for EAN13 to something called auto discriminate supplementals. In other words, grab them if you can find them, just don't worry about it if you don't, and that should take care of you on that. That would be my thought. How about mailing Slab books? Great question. I don't think we do anything special with those. We probably should. And I think that's something that we could do, because I don't think the weight calculation on Atomic Avenue, and again, I could be wrong about this because I'm trying to remember code that we pass along to them, I don't think we changed the weight calculation based on the grade, which is really what a slabbed book does. Um, that's a great question, though, and I want to follow up on that one. So, if you don't see any action on that one way or another, or any kind of comment on it, Joe, if you do me a favor, send a note to support@comicbase.com and just remind me, because I don't want to forget it. I never want to forget anything we're saying during these things right here, but just like the same way, I never want to forget anything that we're saying if we're talking during Comic-Con. After a while, there's just so much data flying through my head, I just can't keep it all straight, and then something that's, loud and beeping and alarms going off distracts me, and I forget everything I was doing that day. So don't let me forget, because that's a really good point, because that is actually a weird situation where I could have a 3.4 ounce comic book which suddenly becomes a 9 ounce comic book just because its grade changed, and that's something we can easily handle. All right, so let's see here. Is the manual search using the barcode numbers off the title of the magazine? In other words, are the barcodes in the database, but your reader isn't pulling them? That's Greg is asking John. The question that raises is whenever you can't get a comic to come up or an item to come up using the barcode, two questions you got to ask yourself. One is, did my barcode scanner beep, right? So if it beeped, like boop, right, then that means the barcode scanner at least thought it got a scan. If I'm clicking it and it does nothing and I'm repositioning all day long and it never beeps, then that means the barcode scanner wasn't able to read the thing at all. But if it did read it, then the next question is, did it get the whole code? And one good way to test anything with a barcode scanner is open up Notepad and just scan the comic book blindly there, and you'll see all the digits that it scanned. And compare what it scanned there is if you look up the comic book by hand and compare it against the barcode that's listed in ComicBase and see if it all matches. The most common thing that happens is that it didn't catch the supplemental at the end because your barcode scanner is configured such that it's not requiring that. That's the most common thing that goes wrong. But it could could be the reverse as well. Another thing that could happen is we might have a different barcode scan barcode than the one you've got. That does happen. We get a lot of our information on barcodes from the publishers. Sometimes they say it's going to be a certain barcode, and then by the time they print it, whoever's in charge of printing the barcode, didn't get the memo, and so it winds up being different. That does happen. At which point, fix it in your copy of ComicBase, send us a correction. We'll fix it on our end. Yeah, there's actually in the forums, there's if you go to comicbase.com, go to tips and tricks, there's barcode scanning tips on there. Have a look during the troubleshooting steps there, but it's pretty easy to kind of figure out where the whole process went wrong. It basically comes down to, did the thing your scanner give us, does it match what we've got on file? And if it does, it'll find it, and if it doesn't, it won't. But you kind of take it from there. But happy to talk about that later if you want. All right. Let's see here. YouTube is video. Okay. Let's see here. And okay. Yeah, Greg says dream on. Excellent. Okay. Let's see here. Oro says, I just like videos 2-inch chair. Can't search a video. True that. That is one thing, again, I dreamed of having happen, is that we do cover a lot of really cool stuff with these live streams. Like, it's stuff that just you're never going to find out about the program unless it just came up during one of these things, because it's just weird stuff in the program which probably me and 2 other people have ever heard about. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if the automatic captioning in YouTube would actually make some of this stuff searchable? I don't know if it is or not. I haven't looked into it at that level, and I know I don't have the time to automate, to feed in my own transcript of everything that's been said, so it could become searchable that way. If anyone knows, let me know, because there are actually tools, and YouTube does seem to have a pretty good one for just recognizing the spoken words and turning it into some kind of audio track. But has that become part of the search? I don't know. Would like to find out. Let's see here. I want to skip down a bit because people started talking a lot. Link to video. Deep instruction could be a video. Barcode number strap. Okay, got that. Tomorrow's short barcode, yeah, yeah. So Gregory was pointing out that the ones that he was having trouble with are the ones without the supplementals. So that was the situation we were talking about, where it's a barcode without. On publications, typically what you're supposed to use the supplemental for is either the month of publication if it's got 2 characters, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there's a 03 at the end. That means typically it means March. 04 is April, and so forth. Or with the longer barcodes, the 5-character barcodes at the end. At least in comic books, I know that the first 3 are meant to be the issue number, the 4th one is meant to be the variation, and the 5th one's meant to be the printing or the country. Now, realistically, the way barcodes are actually issued is if you are a manufacturer, like, so for instance, copies of ComicBase. We are a member of the organization that allows us to make, UPCs for ComicBase. So, so basically what they do is for your membership fee, you get rental space on the first 6 digits of that barcode. So, like, for instance, Marvel, all their comic books, at least under one of their shell corporations, were like 59606. I guess it's the first 5 digits. So 59606 is always going to be Marvel. DC can't use it, right? Beyond that, what they typically use for the next several digits is they'll come up with a series number. And this is entirely created in-house. Nobody tells them what all the rest of the numbers have to be. They don't tell them that they have to be there at all. There's a rule about how a check digit is computed based on whatever numbers you do choose. That's automatic. It's built into the barcode symbol itself. But basically, there's no one making you do anything if you decide I'm going to publish a barcode. So it's really just how good are your own internal processes about again, the guy soliciting the book, the guy who publishes it, the listed diamond, and the guy who prints the barcode, who types into the barcode font that they're going to print on the cover. Did those guys all get their act together, or didn't they? Just companies like Marvel tend to be pretty darn good. Companies like, I'm not going to name any names, but other companies are quite a bit hit or miss. And a lot of times we'll find out with especially some of the smaller companies, that they'll use the same barcode on some new release that they used 12 years ago on an utterly different title, and just because again they own the first 5 digits and they just threw whatever they want at the wall. And so in those cases, ComicBase will say, these 3 comics, which may or may not be related in any manner, all have the same barcode, so which one are you scanning? That's what we do. All right. Okay, I'm gonna move on beyond the barcodes right now. Okay, the UPC for them in the database. Yeah, so in ComicBase, based on what you're typing, one thing to look at is there's actually 3 or more fields that we will search all automatically, and we'll take the first match that comes along. We'll search the ISBN, the ISSN, the ASIN, the UPC, and something else, to try to figure out if any of those match. We can. I'm sorry, the alt UPC. Sometimes this was really popular in manga for some reason. Is they'd have a UPC on the back and then to have another UPC on the inside front cover, and so we will track any or all of them. And so if we get any match at all, we'll take it, or at the very least we'll say here's a possibility for you. Rarely. Unless it's just a sloppy company, are you going to have these things? I've come up where the comic book is not related to the one you're looking for. If I've never seen just random stuff come up. I've often seen, like I say, with some really sloppy companies, a comic that is from they'll use the same barcode as they publish for a completely different title that month, just because no one's paying attention. But you're not going to scan in one issue of Marvel and get a completely different issue from Marvel. It doesn't happen. All right. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we're talking about tomorrow's barcodes and manual name search now. Okay, so hopefully we're getting beyond that. By the way, another thing I want to give props to with the H2R graphics guys here is, and this is again the thing I'm using to put these the questions up from the chat, is he just released version 2.0, and God bless him, he got it so it will automatically refresh. So I don't need to keep two different chat windows open at the same time just to figure out what y'all are saying. I can actually just watch one, and I can actually see the chat list. So thank you, John, over at H2R Graphics. You make a great product, and if you're watching this, send me a dang tip jar link or something so I can kick you a few bucks, because that's a good thing, you know. And I like it when people who make good stuff get paid for it. So that's a good thing. All right, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it. We went running long again. Of course we did, because we started talking about barcodes, which, as everyone knows, I can go on about all night. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. It's been fun. I'm heading to the bar, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you again.